Hello, everyone. A belated welcome to Unit 2, Culture Groups, the sort of center of this course. You'll recall from Module 1 that a culture group is sort of a way of thinking about the different cultures in Alaska. Specifically, there's sort of 5 culture groups, as we sometimes call them, groups of cultures that have similarities to each other, despite their individual uniqueness. So each of the modules during this unit will talk about a different one of the 5 culture groups. This first module, Module 5, we will talk about the Sugpiaq and Unangan, or as you may have also heard, the Alutiiq and Aleut peoples. That is a really fun module. I hope you enjoy that one. Among other things, you'll learn about Unangan, traditional ways of navigating through murky, foggy seascapes. You'll learn about traditional Unangan beliefs, what we know about them, which is sometimes less than we'd like. We will learn about um, traditional Sugpiaq whale hunting. We will learn about traditional Sugpiaq gender roles, all sorts of interesting things. I think you will like this module. Certainly, it's one that I find really fascinating and that's near and dear to my heart. In the module itself, I talk about what some of the different readings are. This one is by Deborah Corbett, an archaeologist who I know really well, where she talks about sort of synthesizing some of the insights we have about traditional Unangan beliefs prior to Russian colonialism. Um, and then the second one by Ariel Tyvikowski, who's actually teaches here at University of Alaska Anchorage now. So that's pretty cool. This other one, the Alutiiq Museum, I actually have a different link on the syllabus than in the folder, but they're from the same museum, and either one is fine to use. If you do get a chance to watch the one that's actually in the module folder, though, I would really like you to. It's fantastic and it explains the concepts really well and clearly. So anyways, that's what we've got going on there for Module 5. Module 6 is about Yupik and Chupik cultures. I also really like this one. You're going to get tired of me saying that because I'm going to say that I really like every single one of these culture groups to talk about, and that is true. But Yupik culture is fascinating in a million different ways. One of the ways that I find most interesting is Yupik language and storytelling. So in this unit, or rather that module, we will talk at length about Yupik language. Your readings, both by Yupik authors Harold Napoleon and Oscar Kawagli, respectively, both have to do with sort of underlying Yupik worldviews, okay? And so I think they'll pair well in the sense that the readings are going to kind of offer a different perspective than my lecture and go into some different facets of Yupik life that hopefully you will find interesting and compelling. If you want to do a deep dive into Yupik culture outside of sort of language and worldview, although that definitely comes up a lot as well in this website, a website that you might like is yupikscience.org if you're kind of interested in learning more about the day-to-day mechanics of survival in traditional Yupik life. Lots and lots of really fantastic information put on, among other things, by the Anchorage Museum and the Chillista Elders Council. CEC has just done a tremendous amount of different work on recording elders' knowledge. So anyways, that's a good website as well. But these two readings, I think you'll really like them. The book reading by Harold Napoleon, I think I touch on this in the module, but it's part of a much longer book called, well, it's a short book, but the excerpt I'm giving you is only a few pages from a book that's, quite a bit longer. It's by a man who was imprisoned when he wrote this in the 1990s, Harold Napoleon. And among other things, his book was trying to grapple with some of the social and substance issues that he saw in some of the communities where he was from. And so it's a challenging topic and not one that I won't say isn't challenging, and we should address that. The part I'm having you read doesn't really get into that a whole lot. It's more of just kind of laying the foundation of Yupik worldviews so that he can then kind of talk about the profound ramifications that historic epidemics had, among other things, as well as um, colonialism. So it's a interesting reading and one that hopefully you will like that reading and like this one as well. And then also if it is something where you want to learn more about sort of a unique perspective on substance issues, certainly Harold Napoleon's entire book, Yuyurak, is certainly one that many people have found compelling. But anyways, Module 6 on UPick and Chupick, my actual lecture material is going to address a lot of sort of elements of language and storytelling, and a bit too about traditional ecological knowledge, the sort of ways of thinking about animals in UPick worldview. So I hope you find it compelling. Module 7, in turn, is about Inupiat and St. Lawrence Island Yupik culture. Although I will be the first to admit and acknowledge that the reading is almost entirely about Inupiat culture, with not any really good St. Lawrence Island Yupik material in there, for which I do apologize. And if folks are interested, I'd be happy to send you a direction of some good sources there. But in any case, Module 7 about Inupiat culture, I talk about a number of different topics in that lecture. I talk about sort of traditional Inupiat shelter, traditional Inupiat clothing. I spend some time talking about how does one stay healthy in an environment where most of the plant matter is submerged in a whole lot of snow for, about half the year. Obviously, that presents some vitamin challenges. And so how does Inupiat culture provide solutions to those challenges? You're going to do some interesting readings. At least I think they're interesting. One is about whaling, and specifically a group called the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. Now, there's a bit of a interesting pairing here. I'm having you do a reading by Enoch called Alaska Natives Discuss What Eskimo Means to Them. It was a reading that came out of the context of something that was going on, a PR campaign that Alaska Airlines was doing. But the word Eskimo came up. And so this was an article a few years ago where a newspaper reporter interviewed several Alaska Native people about that term. That's a term that some people do use to refer to themselves, and it's a term that other people definitely feel like is not a term that they would want used about themselves. I strongly, I can't kind of like, pop up in your apartment or something and tell you how to use language when you're not in class or something, but my strong suggestion to you, if you're asking my opinion, would be that unless you yourself are from a specific sort of Alaska Northern background, I wouldn't use that term if you're sort of somebody that's an outsider to those communities, given that some people do find it offensive. I generally try to avoid terms like that. Besides which, there's also just sort of more specific terms you can use. It's more precise to be able to say Inupiat or Yupik to refer to which culture you specifically are talking about. So, or even just the specific community somebody's from. Anyways, for a lot of different reasons. But anyways, I was saying it's kind of a little bit of irony or interestingness here in the sense that I have a reading that's sort of a caution against using that term. And then the next reading is by a group called the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. But that is the name of the group, and that's been the name of that group for several decades. The AWC is a really important group in our state. Among other things, they're part of the um, discussions around and policies around the management of limited bowhead whale huntings by Inupiat communities in the far north. So you'll read a little bit about that in that reading. I've already explained what this reading is. The second reading is really the most substantive in the sense of the longest of the readings and the one that I will talk about in lecture. It's about teasing cousin songs. So it's by Deanna Kingston, who was from um, King Island. Yep. Deanna Kingston's from King Island, if I'm remembering correctly. And she talks about teasing cousin songs. So this whole genre of sort of songs where people make fun of their cousins. It's a fun reading. And also one where I hope you see that there's some interesting, deeper ramifications. But anyways, that's where we're going this week. I hope you find it really interesting. I have had a chance to read through a lot of people's assignment ones. There's still a few more that I'm going through, but most of them I've got done so far. It's been fascinating to learn about everybody this semester. I'm also making my way through test one. So far, people are doing pretty solid on test one, honestly, pretty solid. I expect our overall class average will be pretty high. So I am so grateful to everybody and for your effort and energy in this class. Do be aware that by Saturday we have a new assignment. That assignment is basically telling me what your paper topic is going to be and identifying a few sources that you plan to use for it. So nothing too crazy, but really just something to make sure you're kind of making progress towards that eventual goal of the research paper, which, because we're in this accelerated course, that research paper is going to be due in a short 2.5 weeks. So assignment 2 is really just sort of a chance for you to tell me what topic you're picking and for you to show progress. And it's a good chance too for me to be able to give you any constructive criticism or feedback if you're going off the rails completely. So, or maybe just, if you're misunderstanding the assignment. All right, that's it. Thank you very much for your time. Oh, and on that assignment, by the way, or on that research paper, as a friendly reminder, pick a culture. You want to pick three or so tradition aspects of traditional culture that you want to focus on and read about and write about. And then you want to focus on one contemporary issue, something affecting the community today. When I say a contemporary issue, people often think that must mean a negative issue, or at least a challenging issue. That's not necessarily the case. It could be something really positive that's happening. Just it has to be a contemporary topic. The idea is sort of the first, you know, let's say half or two-thirds of the paper. It's kind of about here's the way things were, here's several aspects of the way things were. And then sort of that last part of the paper is sort of, and here's something about how things are today, right? Alaska Native cultures are not past tense. But if you have any questions about that, let me know. And also, if you're wanting to go a different direction with it, sometimes people have ideas that don't sort of fit that really specific mold, but still make a great paper about an Alaska Native culture. So if you have a different idea, feel free to pitch that in your assignment, and I'll try to let you know if that's a good idea or not. If you do think you're going in a different direction than the normal requirements, probably better to give me an email so that I can, even before you've submitted assignment to, just so I can give you feedback and say, yeah, that sounds actually really cool, or, that's a little bit too far outside of this assignment. All right, but with no further ado, I'm going to sign off now. So thanks a bunch and have a good evening.